The bottle slipped from my hand and hit the carpet with a thud. Didn't break, of course not. Things only shatter when you're not already broken inside. It was Christmas Eve. I'd spent 6 hours on the road to surprise her. Packed the trunk with gifts. Brought her favorite wine. Hell, I even practiced tolerating her cousin's vegan stuffing in the car mirror. But the house was empty. No lights on except the one flickering in the den. No music, no candles. Not even the fake pine-scented spray she always went overboard with. I stood in the doorway like a stray dog, snow still clinging to my coat, wondering if I'd somehow walked into someone else's life. And then I saw him. Her grandfather, Harold, sunk into his usual seat by the fireplace like time forgot him. Same cardigan, same glass of Glenlivet, same expression he wore at our wedding, somewhere between amusement and pity. The fire crackled, warming the room with a comfort that felt like mockery. He didn't even look up, just turned a page in his newspaper and muttered, "You're late. She's not here." That's when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't look. Part of me already knew, but I opened it anyway, because I'm a glutton for punishment. One message, no punctuation, no shame. Hey, took a spontaneous trip with Brian. Just needed time away. Used the savings account. Hope that's okay. Brian. Her ex. The one she swore she blocked. The one she ran into once at the grocery store. Totally random. You're being paranoid. The one whose name used to live in the back of her mouth like a swallowed pill. I didn't say a word. I didn't breathe. Across the room, Harold raised his glass. They'll pay it back. Sooner than they think. I still hadn't moved. My body felt like concrete poured over rebar. My brain was racing, trying to catch up to my heart, which had already flatlined. He finally looked at me then. And in that moment, I didn't see an old man. I saw something colder. Sharper. Like a knife had put on a cardigan and grown wise. "Come sit," he said. "I'll pour you one." I moved, but it wasn't me who walked across that room. It was the version of me that used to believe in forgiveness. That one hadn't yet accepted the war that just started. The chair creaked as I sat. He handed me the glass. My hand shook. "Tell me what happened," I said finally. "You got robbed," he said simply. "But not for the first time. This time, though, you're not alone." That line hit harder than the message. I looked at him, really looked, and something in his eyes said this wasn't the first betrayal he'd seen. Not even the 10th. And if you're still listening to this, you probably know how this kind of pain goes. Or maybe you're just curious how deep betrayal can cut when it wears a smile and signs your Christmas card with a heart emoji. Either way, it helps us more than you know if you tap that subscribe button. Really, over 90% of people listening right now aren't subscribed, and that makes it harder for us to keep telling these stories. It motivates the whole team when you do. So thank you. Now back to that night. The wine sat untouched on the counter. The snow kept falling. I finally asked him the question clawing through my ribs. "You knew, didn't you?" He didn't answer right away. Just leaned forward, set his glass down, and opened the drawer next to his chair. Pulled out something thick. Paper. Yellowed at the edges. "You ever wonder why she insisted you put everything in her name? Why she didn't want you to set up the house fund under both of you?" He tossed the folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a soft thump, like a quiet accusation. "She didn't own this house," he said. "Her daddy never finished the paperwork. And I never gave up my stake." I stared at the folder. He sat back again. "You've been good to her. Better than she deserved, frankly. I saw you fix the furnace, repaint the porch, pay off her student loans. You even drove her dog to the vet at 2 a.m. He paused. "She thought you were an investment. Turns out, you were the one investing. Time, money, dignity. And now she's trying to cash out." I clenched my jaw. My hand still held the glass, untouched. He reached over, pulled out a second envelope. This one was smaller, newer. His thumb ran along the flap, slow and deliberate. I've been watching her play this game for years. Always a new angle. Always someone else footing the bill. I let her think she was clever. Let her think old grandpa was just a relic with a pension. He looked me in the eye. "She's about to find out I'm the one who wrote the rules." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because something inside me had already turned to ice. Not rage. Not sorrow. Just precision. Christmas wasn't over. Not yet. And by the time it ended, she'd wish it had never come. I don't remember sitting there for that long. The hours blurred together, firelight flickering, wind clawing at the windows, and Harold, my wife's 80-something grandfather, sipping his scotch like nothing had just detonated in my chest. I thought he'd eventually ask how I was doing. Maybe offer some clumsy apology on her behalf. Instead, he did something worse. He told me stories. Not warm, nostalgic ones. Not the type you hear from grandparents trying to fight off loneliness. These were sharp, surgical, measured like he'd rehearsed every syllable. You know the bakery down on Marsh Street? He said. Used to be mine. Bought it in '72. Sold it to a young couple who thought scones would save the world. They were wrong, but they paid cash. I just nodded. I hadn't touched my drink. The duplex by the post office, also mine once. And the 3 lots behind the library. All gone now. But I kept 3. Quietly. I frowned. You mean rentals? No, he said, tipping his glass toward the living room wall. I mean this. This house. One out on Chandler Hill. In a cabin nobody talks about. They're still in my name, at least halfway. Your wife's daddy always thought he was smarter than the paper trail. He wasn't. I leaned forward, elbows on knees. Why are you telling me this? He took his time answering. Inhaled slowly, like he could taste the moment. Because this place matters to you, he said. And you matter to me. More than she does, at this point. I let that sink in. I don't think I'd ever heard it, any variation of it, from any of her family. Not in 5 years of birthdays, barbecues, or long rides home after another argument she swore was just me overreacting. And the savings? I finally asked. The account she emptied? He didn't flinch. I saw it. Every month. Like clockwork. Auto deposits. You even rounded up the cents, like a man who thinks about the future. I blinked. How would you even know that? Because I set it up. 5 years ago. Your name on the deposit side. Hers? Never added. She just had access. My brain struggled to catch up. You set up our account? No. I set up yours. She just assumed. He stood, slow but steady, and walked back to the drawer beneath the bookshelf. Pulled out an envelope. Not the yellowed kind from earlier, but fresh. Thick. Legal-sized. He handed it to me like it weighed nothing. But it did weigh something. Everything. Go ahead, he said. I opened it. Inside, 2 documents. The first, a notarized letter confirming dual ownership of the property with a revocation clause, effective immediately upon breach of marital trust. The second, my name as primary custodian of the associated marital asset account, with a provision, transfer authority subject to fiduciary review by H.M. Caldwell. Harold, why would you do this? I asked. He sat back down, slower this time, and stared into the fire. Because I've seen her type. I raised her father. Watched him marry a woman with teeth hidden behind a wedding smile. And I watched that woman turn their daughter into a mirror. So when you came along, fixing faucets, remembering birthdays, writing thank you notes after Sunday dinners. He shrugged. I figured you'd need a parachute someday. I couldn't speak. You think I didn't hear how she talked to you at Thanksgiving? He went on. You think I didn't see her switch the dinner seating so she wouldn't have to sit next to you? Or the way she called you boring in front of her cousin, like you were just furniture with a paycheck? I sat back hard. The leather armchair groaned beneath me. My throat burned, but I hadn't drunk a drop. He refilled his scotch. Didn't offer more for me. Men like you, he said, get discarded. Quietly. Women like her don't throw fits. They just slide into other people's beds while smiling at the waiter. And when they leave, they pack nothing. Because they've already taken everything. The fire cracked. Somewhere down the block, wind pushed at a trash bin. The whole world felt like it was tilting. But now, he added, you get to decide what gets taken next. I looked down at the papers. My name, clean and bold, stamped across both pages like I'd finally arrived at a destination I didn't know I'd been heading toward. Why now? I asked. Why tonight? Harold swirled his drink. Because no one remembers a peaceful Christmas. They remember the year everything changed. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't just the husband anymore. I was the reckoning. It was like reading a blueprint for a house I thought I owned, only to realize I was just a long-term guest. The co-ownership clause was dated 10 years before I ever met her. Typed on old-stock legal paper, crisp but slightly faded, like it had been preserved for just this moment. At the bottom, 2 signatures, Harold's and her father's. But not hers. Nowhere on that document was her name. Not even as a beneficiary. Just a clause buried halfway down the page. Ownership may be revoked unilaterally by Harold M. Caldwell, without notice, under conditions of fraud, abandonment, or malfeasance. I read that part twice. Then again, and again. Each time, the meaning burned hotter. She had no idea. All this time, she'd been peacocking around our shared life like she owned the crown jewels. Smirking when she suggested upgrades to the kitchen like I should be grateful for her vision. Telling her friends our house, when I was the one who mowed the lawn, patched the drywall, paid the mortgage, even as she drained the savings behind my back. Turns out, she didn't own a square inch of it. Harold must have seen the realization crash over my face because he leaned back, satisfied. The kind of satisfaction that doesn't come from cruelty, but from justice that's been marinating for decades. She never asked how the house was financed, he said, almost casually. Just assumed it landed in her lap like everything else. Never occurred to her that I left the door unlocked on purpose, just to see who'd rob it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. And the bank? I asked. He chuckled. That account. She thought it was hers to use. But it's tied to my family trust. You think I'd let her touch real assets with that entitlement complex? He picked up the phone. An actual rotary one, green, chipped, probably older than both of us. The kind that makes a real sound when you dial, like each number is pulling a trigger. He spun the dial slowly. 9 numbers. Then a pause. Thomas, he said, once someone answered. Yes. Put me through to the fraud department. Not the general line. The direct one. Another pause. A click. The fire crackled, and somewhere in the walls, the old heater groaned to life. Harold stood as he spoke, walked to the mantel, ran his hand across a photograph of his wife, long past. I'd like to freeze the joint account, he said finally, his voice calm as lake ice. All of it. That was it. 6 words. No drama. No threats. Just a surgeon's precision. He hung up, sat down, and resumed sipping his scotch like he'd just placed a bet on a horse he knew would win. I stared at him. That's it. That's the first incision, he said. The rest comes later. Slowly. She won't see the hemorrhage until she's already pale. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. Too steady. He handed me a second folder. This one thin. Inside, a copy of the trust agreement for the account she just drained. Only it didn't say hers. It said, temporary steward, spouse, contingent on compliance with Clause 9A. I found Clause 9A. It read, funds may be withdrawn by the spouse contingent upon the preservation of good faith and absence of material deceit. Beneath it, a subclause, deceit defined as betrayal, infidelity, or intentional financial harm. He looked at me. We'll need a statement. From Brian. I blinked. You think he'll talk? Harold gave a grin that made my skin crawl. Let's just say, he has incentives. Then he tapped the paper again. This isn't about revenge, he said. It's about education. She thinks men are predictable, weak, that you'll go away quietly, lick your wounds, and blame yourself. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. You are not her lesson. She is yours. Something deep inside me moved. Not anger, not grief. Something colder. Resolve. Harold stood again. We start with the account. The embarrassment comes later. Just wait until she finds out Brian can't cover a $300 hotel deposit. I laughed. For the first time all night. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the sound you make when the last string snaps and the puppet starts walking on its own. She's going to panic, I said. She already is, he replied, checking his watch. Time zones work in our favor. Outside, snow was still falling. Inside, something else had just started to melt. Me. The old me. The man who made excuses for her. The man who stayed quiet at dinner when she rolled her eyes. The man who smiled while bleeding. That man was gone. All that was left now was a man with the deed and a trigger already pulled. The morning sun slipped through the blinds like it didn't know what happened the night before, as if it hadn't watched me become something colder, something precise. Harold was already up. He'd made coffee, but the old man was too traditional for sugar, just black and bitter, like the rest of the day was about to be. I was staring into the mug when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen might as well have been a dagger. Her. Hey babe, I let it ring out. A few seconds later, another buzz. Hey, I think something's wrong. My card isn't working. Did you mess something up? Buzz. Brian and I can't check into the hotel. They're saying the card was declined and flagged. Buzz. Are you ignoring me? 10 more times she tried. Voicemail after voicemail. Her voice losing its practiced sweetness, slipping into sharpness. Then desperation. That's when she made the mistake of calling Harold. I watched him lift the rotary receiver again. This time with a little smirk like he'd been waiting for this moment since the first time she rolled her eyes at me during dinner. He didn't even say hello. Just listened to her voice crackle through the line. Then said, all that money you stole? It's in review. Bank's holding it under fraud watch. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. And he hung up. No second sentence. No warmth. No explanation. Just click. And for the first time in 5 years, I realized something very strange. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't devastated. I was calm. Flatline calm. Because it wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about logistics. Execution. Steps in a sequence she never expected me to understand, let alone master. I checked the bank app, just for fun. Her last transaction, a $1,328 charge from a resort in Playa del Carmen. Approved at 11:13 p.m. Declined at 11:14. The refund? Pending. I scrolled. There were spa bookings, dinner reservations, even a $600 romantic beachfront add-on that made me scoff out loud. Not romantic enough to survive without Wi-Fi and a credit line, apparently. Because 10 minutes later, she texted again. Brian's freaking out. We don't have cash. He's trying to call his ex to Venmo something. This is so humiliating. Humiliating? That was her first use of that word in years. When I was the one getting left out of family photos, it wasn't humiliating. When I picked up the check for her cousin's bachelorette party after she forgot her wallet, that wasn't humiliating. When she compared me to Brian, tall, impulsive, unemployed Brian, because I didn't know how to have fun, I was supposed to take it as constructive feedback. Now she was stranded. No card. No cash. No backup plan. Harold sat across from me, flipping through a binder I hadn't noticed before. It was filled with bank records, clipped statements, even printed screenshots of her messages. Ones I'd never seen, but he had somehow archived. This is petty, I said. Correct, he replied. And earned. He slid one of the pages across the table. A screenshot from her group chat with her friends. She'd once posted a photo of me in the background of our kitchen, in sweats, half asleep. Captioned it. The things I put up with for a decent 401k. The chat reaction? A string of laughing emojis. I set the page down carefully. Felt nothing. She'll come home, I said quietly. Oh, she'll come crawling, he replied. And that's when we hand her the second gift. Buzz. New message. They kicked us out. We're at some awful airport hotel. This is insane. I texted back, just one sentence. Might want to ask Brian how good he is at applying for lines of credit. Hope he's got a job this month. 3 dots. Then nothing. She didn't text again after that. I sat back and let the silence stretch. Harold was already halfway through his second cup of coffee. She ever tell you what she did to her first fiancé? He asked suddenly. I blinked. What? He grinned. Ran off with his best friend 2 months before the wedding. Said she was finding herself. The friend was married with a baby on the way. You weren't the first security blanket she tried to light on fire. I shook my head, laughing darkly. Did her dad know? Of course, Harold said. He just didn't care. As long as the family name stayed clean, he'd bleach any stain. I leaned back in the chair. But what happens now? I asked. Harold looked at me like the answer was obvious. Now, he said. Now we keep peeling the onion. 1 layer at a time. And make sure the smell sticks. Outside, the snow had stopped. But inside, the frost was just beginning. Her first move was textbook damage control. Late Christmas morning, after hours of radio silence from both me and Harold, she finally posted a photo, filtered to death, of her and Brian on some tropical beach. They were framed like they were starring in their own rom-com. Her in oversized sunglasses, hair tousled just enough to suggest spontaneity. Him shirtless, grinning like an unpaid actor pretending he hadn't just been kicked out of a hotel lobby for holding up a canceled card. The caption? Healing is messy, but necessary water wave, broken heart sparkles. I nearly choked on my coffee. Harold didn't say anything at first. He was leafing through his paper, pretending not to care. But then he lowered it just enough to glance at me. She really posted that? I held up my phone, screen facing him. He squinted. Brian looks constipated. We both laughed. Then the real entertainment began. Within 10 minutes, the comments started rolling in. At first, it was her usual crowd of curated enablers. Stay strong, Queen 2 Hearts. You deserve peace. So proud of you for choosing you. But then a name popped up in the thread that froze the flow like a dam slamming shut. Walter B. Haynes. Harold saw it before I did. His eyebrows lifted. I'll be damned. Walt finally got on Instagram. Who's that? Retired circuit judge. Been friends with me since Nixon was in office. Used to handle marital asset disputes. Real subtle guy. The comment was short. Brutal. Messy. You robbed your husband at Christmas. That was it. Just that. Under it. Within minutes. Dozens of likes. Then shocked emojis. Then replies. Wait, what? Is this true? Robbed him how? Screenshots of her beach photo started circulating outside her followers. People began resharing it with their own commentary. One account captioned it, manifesting a relationship like this, where you leave your man on Christmas and take his savings to Mexico with your ex smiling face with heart sparkles. Someone else stitched together an old post of hers, where she bragged about building a life together with me and contrasted it with the beach shot. Caption: building a life equals draining his account and running off with Brian? The internet's memory is a graveyard with open caskets. By the afternoon, Brian had vanished from her feed. His tag removed. All their photos together gone like a political scandal scrubbed clean. Then the beach photo disappeared. She re-uploaded it. Same image, new caption. Taking space. Comments off for mental health. But it was already too late. Screenshots had made it to Facebook, Reddit, even a private group her mom's church friends were in. And somehow, no one could prove who. Someone sent a cropped version of the original post to her company's Slack channel. No context. Just the image, the caption, and the comment from the retired judge. Harold looked at me as we scrolled through the damage. I wonder if she's figured it out yet, he said. What's that? That silence can be louder than shouting. Especially online. The silence wasn't just virtual. Her phone, which she once wielded like a spotlight, was now a trap. She couldn't post without backlash. Couldn't reply without evidence. Couldn't control the narrative without looking like she was trying to cover something up. The digital leash she used to keep around my neck had wrapped itself around hers. She tried one more Hail Mary that night, posting a quote on her story. You never really know someone until you divorce them. Harold burst out laughing when he saw it. She really thinks that's clever? Probably stole it off Pinterest. He raised his glass. Well, now she knows at least two people she didn't really know. You and me. That night, I watched as her follower count dipped. Not drastically, just enough to send a message. And more telling? Her silence. No more stories. No more likes. No more cutesy heart emojis in other people's posts. Like she'd vanished, but not completely. Just hiding. Cornered by a world she used to bend with hashtags and filters. She didn't just lose money. She lost control. And the internet never forgets what it likes to humiliate. When the applause dies down, all that's left is the echo. And for her, that echo started screaming by nightfall. After the public backlash hit social media like a blunt weapon, she must have figured the worst was behind her. That deleting comments and reposting filtered nonsense would be enough to make the world forget. But what she didn't count on, what she never accounted for, was Brian's baggage catching up to both of them like a bloodhound with a court order. It started with a phone call. Not to her. To Brian. From his sister. Harold and I were sitting in the living room again. He was finishing a crossword. I was sipping cold coffee when he handed me his iPad and grinned. Check the comments on this one. It was a post on some Facebook group, Second Wives Anonymous, or something like that. Someone had uploaded a screenshot of her beach photo and asked, anyone recognize this guy? Claims he's a full-time dad. Meanwhile, the top comment? That's Brian Matheson. My brother. Parasite with a passport. Ask him how often he sees his daughter. For hours later, the thread had over 100 comments. A woman claiming to be Brian's ex-wife chimed in with something even sharper. Just so everyone's clear, he was supposed to have our daughter for Christmas. Instead, he's off on a romantic fraud-funded vacation with someone else's wife. Congrats on sabotaging your custody case. Genius. And then the coup de grace. One of the commenters shared a screenshot of an email apparently sent to the judge in their family court proceedings. Attached was the infamous beach photo. Captioned, evidence of irresponsible parental behavior during court-assigned custody period. Harold whistled low. And now the rats begin to eat each other. Later that evening, another little ping showed up. This time from a local Mexico-based forum for digital nomads. Apparently, a couple had been booted from their resort due to unauthorized use of a credit card that had since been reported frozen. No names, but the details matched a little too closely. Right down to the female guest claiming the funds were her husband's. That was the final straw for Brian. He didn't blow up. No dramatic confrontation. No suitcase throwing. Just a quiet conversation with the hotel staff, a few uncomfortable calls, and then, according to one of the night staff who decided to spill to Twitter, he booked a separate one-way flight home and left her there. Didn't even say goodbye at the desk. Just vanished. And suddenly, the influencer on Healing Journey was alone. Stranded in a foreign country with no card, no cash, no +1, and a bill she couldn't cover. Her confidence, once weaponized, now hollowed out. At 1:13 a.m., my phone lit up again. This time, she didn't text. She called. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, she tried again. Then again. And again. No voicemails. Just raw panic pulsing through the screen. The fifth call came through, and this time I let it ring for a while. Just long enough to make her think I might pick up. Then I pressed decline. Harold, still in his chair, looked up from his crossword. She called. Yeah. Good. I didn't ask why. I didn't have to. Because silence was no longer a punishment. It was a message. One she never expected from me. She thought she'd left me behind, replaced me with a beach, a man, a caption. But now the caption was gone. The man had walked, and the beach was just another hotel lobby where she was waiting to be escorted out. She tried one last call. Blocked number. Didn't matter. I already knew the sound of her voice trembling would be sweeter than any apology she could manufacture. And I wasn't going to let her waste it on me. Somehow, God knows how, she found the cash for a one-way flight home. Maybe she sold her jewelry. Maybe she begged her parents. Or maybe Brian, in a final pathetic gesture, sent her something to make himself feel less guilty before his custody hearing boiled him alive. Doesn't matter. What matters is this. Her card worked for one final swipe. Just enough to board a cramped economy flight with no luggage, no support, and no plan. She landed around midnight. Late, cold, empty airport. No one waiting with a sign. No warm hugs. No car. No excuses. Just her, dragging some borrowed duffel bag down the escalator into the kind of quiet that only airports and betrayal can create. I didn't pick her up. Didn't offer to. She took a rideshare home. Paid cash, I assume. By the time her boots crunched across the front porch, the snow had crusted over with a layer of sleet. The wind was cutting mean. Her key still worked, but not for long. I was upstairs, lights off, waiting. Not to see her, just to know she saw it. Because on the kitchen table, placed deliberately under the overhead light, were two things. First, a notarized letter from Harold, elegantly typed, stamped, and signed, revoking her right to reside on the property effective immediately. It included her full name, her maiden name, and the clause he'd written into the deed 15 years ago when he first considered giving her father a break. A clause he never expected he'd use until now. Second, a black folder. Inside it, a printout of every transaction she made from the joint account in the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. Itemized, categorized, with merchant codes. There was the romantic suite upgrade, the couple's tequila tasting, the $740 beachwear shopping spree. It was all there, documented with enough precision to make an IRS auditor jealous. On top of the folder was a note. Handwritten. From me. Just one line. These were your Christmas gifts. You just opened them late. No signature. No greeting. Not even a flourish at the end. Just the kind of sentence you don't forget, because it doesn't let you. I heard her boots stop moving in the hallway. Silence. Then the faint sound of paper shifting as she opened the folder. And then, nothing. No outburst. No yelling. Just breath. Short. Shaky. She walked through the house like a ghost, maybe hoping to find something that still felt like home. But everything was sterile now. I'd removed the photos. The throw blanket she loved. Even her stupid little mug with wifey in gold cursive had vanished from the shelf. The only warmth left in that house was the echo of what used to be, and even that was evaporating. She walked upstairs. The master bedroom was locked. She tried the guest room. Unmade. Mattress bare. She opened the bathroom cabinet. Empty. Her drawer in the vanity? Removed. I'd left her just enough to think she could crawl back. Just enough to realize she wouldn't. She came back downstairs. The kitchen lights still on. Folder still open. She picked up her phone. I know because the screen lit up through the window. A call, probably to me. Or maybe her mom. Maybe Brian, in one final pathetic reach for familiarity. But no one answered. Not anymore. Her comfort was gone. Her plan B had fled. Her safety net had been replaced with a floor of glass. I watched through the crack in the blinds as she sat on the couch. Alone. Motionless. Shoulders hunched, like she was bracing for some kind of impact that had already happened 3 days ago. And still, no tears. Not because she was strong. Because she still couldn't believe the story had flipped. She wasn't the protagonist anymore. She was just edited out. She didn't sleep that night. She sat on the edge of the couch until the sky shifted from black to ash gray, clutching her phone like a lifeline that no longer had signal. I didn't come downstairs. Didn't need to. Every second she sat there was part of the sentence she wrote for herself. Silent. Cold. Exiled in the very house she once decorated with live, laugh, love, signs, and weaponized smiles. By morning, she snapped, grabbed her bag, stormed out without a word, slammed the door hard enough to shake the wreath off its hook. I didn't follow. Just listened. Watched through the front window as she stood on the porch like she expected the weather to feel sorry for her. It didn't. She punched in her parents' address into her phone and walked. On foot. In the snow. Half a mile to their suburban palace where she always went when she needed to be coddled. When she wanted to reframe herself as the victim. when she wanted to spin a new version of events with herself as the misunderstood, underappreciated martyr. But this time, that door didn't open with sympathy. It opened with fire. She barely made it through the first sob when her father stepped into the foyer and didn't even let her finish her opening line. "You stole," he said. "No build-up. No hug. From your husband. And your own grandfather." Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. "You embarrassed this family," he continued, voice sharp like the creases in his pressed shirt. "Do you have any idea who your grandfather is to this community? What it means when his name shows up in a court filing against his own granddaughter for theft?" She tried again. "I just needed." "You needed Brian?" he roared. She winced. That name stung now. She'd spent years defending it, romanticizing it. "Brian makes me feel alive. Brian listens to me. Brian doesn't expect me to be someone I'm not." But Brian had gone radio silent the moment her credit stopped working. Just a ghost with abs and no custody rights. Her mother stepped into view then. Pale. Quiet. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at her daughter like she was some tragic headline come to life. "Finally, you had everything. A good man. A home. Stability. And you threw it away for what? Instagram photos and some barefoot burnout with a minor criminal record." The mother didn't raise her voice. That made it worse. Disappointment always hurts more when it whispers. "I was unhappy," her daughter mumbled, trying to locate the old narrative, the one that used to work. Her father laughed bitterly. "You were bored. So you burned your marriage to the ground and used our name to light the match." The silence after that felt like the end of something. She turned, furious now, back into the cold, slammed the door behind her. No car. Harold had revoked access. No Uber. Her cards were locked. No house. She no longer had the right to enter. She was back on the sidewalk. Mascara streaking down red cheeks. Boots wet. No gloves. Just rage and regret and a phone with no one left to call. She tried Harold again. Blocked. She stood on the corner for 10 minutes before she realized what I had already known. There was no one left. Even the people who had always said, "Your family no matter what," had finally meant the what. Her name wasn't a shield anymore. It was a stain. And it was permanent. She made it as far as the public library. That was the only building left where she could go without getting turned away. She sat there most of the day in a corner chair, huddled in her coat, refreshing social media like it owed her a different ending. But all she got was the same recycled shame. Her old posts reshared with biting captions. Her name dunked in comment sections she once ruled, friends going silent, not because they didn't know what to say, but because they'd already chosen a side. And it wasn't hers. Around 3 p.m., she got the notification. A missed delivery from a courier service. Registered, requiring signature. Sent to her parents' address. She had it rerouted to the library, using the last sliver of dignity she could scrape from the bottom of her pride. They held it at the front desk. Plain envelope. Cream-colored. No branding. Just her name in sharp black ink. She knew before she opened it. The weight alone told her. Inside, a civil suit filing. Filed jointly. By me. And Harold. The title was clean and brutal. Petition for damages resulting from marital misappropriation and breach of financial trust. She flipped through it with trembling fingers. Pages of it. Cold, factual, unemotional. Then came the spreadsheet. Every dollar she'd spent. Every timestamp. Every merchant code. Every note. $348.77. Luxury airport lounge upgrade. Used joint account ending in 1174. $2,612.09. Hotel Riviera Maya. Billed as surprise getaway. Purchased 5 days after girls' weekend lie. $118.35. Spa. Couples sea salt wrap. Cross-reference. Location matches timestamped photos on public Instagram post. $7,110.83. Total unauthorized withdrawals. Then a second document. Witness statement. Brian Matheson. Typed. Signed. A mess of cowardice, thinly veiled regret, and attempts to pass blame without fully owning it. But damning all the same. I was under the impression that she and her husband were separated. She told me the funds were from her personal savings. At no point was I made aware that the trip was funded through marital assets not agreed upon by both parties. And the last line. I confirmed that the expenditures listed in Exhibit B were accurate to the best of my knowledge and were associated with my travel with her name during the specified dates. She stopped breathing halfway through. The collapse wasn't sudden, it was slow. The kind of descent that feels like sinking underwater in thick syrup. Panic, then realization, then a bone-deep freeze as her mind finally connected the dots. Not just what had been done, but that everyone had already seen it coming and still let it happen. She tried to call Harold. The line didn't ring. Blocked. Not just ignored. Not just screened. Blocked. That's when she started shaking. Not the kind of trembling from cold or fear, but from the total collapse of narrative. The total erasure of control. She wasn't the misunderstood woman anymore. She wasn't taking time to heal. She was the defendant. Her grandfather, the man she used to kiss on the cheek at family dinners and roll her eyes at in private, had co-signed her financial obituary. She sat there for another hour in that stiff library chair. Still, numb. The librarian approached once. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She nodded. Lied. She was holding the letter like it might apologize. But it didn't. It just sat there. Heavy. Final. Outside, the world moved on. Inside, her story had stopped writing itself. She had just started to believe the worst was behind her. Maybe she thought the silence meant mercy. That we'd tire of the paperwork. That Harold would cave. That I'd show up with that familiar weak apology in hand. "Let's talk. Maybe we can fix this." She probably imagined the legal documents would disappear if she ignored them long enough, like unopened bills or guilt-tripped texts. But time doesn't forgive. It schedules. And at precisely 7:14 p.m. on Christmas night, there was a knock at her parents' door. Not a gentle tap. Not a neighbor with cookies knock. It was the kind that carries paperwork and purpose. Uniformed. Badged. A sheriff's deputy, gloves on, clipboard ready. She opened the door barefoot, wearing one of her old college sweatshirts and a look she hadn't worn since high school detention, defiance trying to mask dread. Full legal name? Her voice caught. Yeah? You've been served." He handed over the folder. Polite. No drama. Just duty. Inside, the formal notice of court proceedings. Her name, bold, capitalized, centered, was listed as defendant. Under it, 2 plaintiffs. My name. And Harold's. The details were all there. The hearing date. The jurisdiction. The charge. Civil misappropriation of marital and trust assets with intent to defraud. She didn't read the rest on the porch. She slammed the door. But her parents did. Her father, red-faced. Her mother, silent as stone. It took less than an hour for the local paper to pick it up. Harold didn't leak it. He didn't have to. The filing was public record. And when someone with his name shows up as a co-plaintiff in a holiday week lawsuit, reporters start typing. By 9 p.m., the headline was live. Granddaughter of prominent landowner sued by husband, grandfather for holiday theft. It included a photo, one of those high-resolution ones from her old business conference bio. Perfect smile. Manicured. Powerful. Cropped just enough to erase the context. But the caption beneath it didn't need help. Defendant. Her full name. The subhead ran colder. Sources close to the family confirmed the lawsuit centers around unauthorized use of marital savings to fund a holiday trip with her former partner. The article mentioned Harold by name, quoted one of his statements from a prior interview about financial integrity, even referenced the trust his name had long upheld in local circles. And for the first time in her life, her name did the opposite. She didn't leave the house the next day, but her phone did. Screenshots of the article hit her old friend groups, alumni pages, even the yoga studio where she used to film promo videos about self-alignment and conscious partnerships. Her last Instagram post, still pinned, still with comments disabled, started getting tagged in news stories. No captions, just links. At home, Harold sat by the fire. Same chair, same scotch, same expression he wore the day this all started. Patient, settled, like the world was finally moving on his schedule again. She thought she was untouchable, he said quietly. I poured my own glass and joined him, both of us watching the flames twist. I raised my glass. Turns out, I said, touch was all she had. He smirked. And now even that's been revoked. We drank. No music. No lights. Just the pop of the fireplace and the kind of silence that tastes like justice finally exhaled. Outside, snow was falling again. But inside, the freeze was complete.